Good morning, this is Dr. B. This is Saturday morning, about 11:30, and rain's kind of stopped, and it'd be nice to get back out there. But I think it's also more important in terms of my obligation to you to get out in front of this course. As you well know, this course officially begins, I believe, on the 30th. Today's the 26th, so it's a couple of days away, and I've already set up the intro material as well as week one. I'm going to continue to doing some week one things in this particular video. I guess I'll do it right now before I forget, and that would be, I forgot what it was. I'll come back to it. Don't get old. But as I said in the previous video I had done about week one, that generally speaking, I have two videos, sometimes more, but generally speaking, it'll be two videos a week that I expect you to watch. And I'm counting that as part of what the seat time would be. So you are expected to do. You could do it all in one night if you want, or I don't know how you could do it all in one night, but clump them all together and make it work that way. Although it's clearly the most optimal way to learn any material anywhere at any time is to break it up into chunks. And I absolutely recommend that you do that for this course. I'm talking too much. It's going to be two videos a week. Often, as today, there will be a video specific to collective mindset book, and then there'll be a second video which is more specific to the other content that's listed in the in that box for this week. Understanding that I will begin to smudge those boxes together as I see things evolving. You also know you have various discussion questions to answer. Not too many people have introduced themselves to me. I continue to say that I'm a little bothered by that, wondering whether I got through to all of you or not. At any rate, I only have, I think, 4, and I think it's 10 of you in the class. So you kind of know who you are, and hopefully you'll plug into that during the week, or during the weekend, I should say. At any rate, I know what I wanted to say very quickly. I'm not going to get into it in good detail today, probably more nearly next week. But I was asked by Dr. Kodak, who's the chair of the department now, to assure me that I could get some kind of some kind of internship activity addressed that you could clock in your internship hours related to student needs, related to student emergencies and so forth. I'm not going to address it yet because I haven't really prepared for it yet, but I want to make the point in general that you are obviously can use a great bulk of what this course is about, especially the assignments, in my view, to as well as the discussions, to clock hours, to respond to the internship obligations that you have, and I'll sign off on those. But I am going to get more specific to something I haven't taught before and I have to prepare for in the week after next. Okay, so again, I'm working out of the text, and you're going to need to have this book in front of you as I go through it. I don't have a PowerPoint associated with this, not yet, anyway. So I'm going back to the first chapter. I know I mentioned last week that, or a couple of days ago, I guess, that someone likened the model to Breaking Bad. Now, as I said last week, I only saw 3 episodes of that before my head started to vibrate. My eyes were twitching. I couldn't watch any more of it. But apparently, the Breaking Bad analogy was meant to show that Breaking Bad was pretty complicated, as many of those streaming shows are. And so is this model. And it is. It's a complicated model. So I'm going to walk you through it again. All right. And then walk over to chapter 2 and introduce that more specifically, because that really has great power as we build a baseline for the course. In fact, you know that the discussion question, one of the discussion questions I put up for this coming week is to simply put up a picture of an artifact, some kind of physical representation you think symbolizes catches what the culture of your building or your school district or your department is about. And all I want is a picture, no description, none whatsoever, no titles, no anything. And then when I'm inviting the people who see your picture to speculate about what this may represent. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, and other times it's not. And I'm not sure if I spoke to the lobster, though I'll probably do it again as I repeat myself a lot, as I repeat myself a lot, as I repeat myself a lot, he says sarcastically, to getting into that. So the next week's discussion question will be what I call the reveal. Now, some of you have had me in class before. I think I did this assignment with you in the previous course. And every time just so in case you're wondering why you're doing it again, don't you necessarily feel the need to use the same artifact. But now that you have some things under your belt, I would probably expect that you come up with some pretty sophisticated things to think about as we move through this. In the end, what's most important is you have not only something of a baseline, but a baseline for conversation, in as much as this course is about culture, in as much as you can't change, the hair on the head of anything, notwithstanding what's not on my head. You can't change a hair on the head of any organization until you really have your arms around the culture that you're dealing with, whether you mean to sustain it, maintain it, keep things as it is, which would make me wonder why you were taking this course in the first place, quite frankly, or if you see some flagrant things that need to be done. This is in a certain sense, the justification for what you may see or what you may not see. So how would you take the strengths, strengthen the strengths, and how would you take the weaknesses and strengthen them too? Because when you stop trying to get better, you stop being good. All right, so I'm going to have to go back to just so you really understand. I don't expect you to master it, but I do expect you to refer to this as often as possible in your various assignments. I'll be looking for that as such. So quickly, again, I'm on page 6. I will tell you that when we put this model together, we had it color coded, but the publisher wouldn't let us put this in color. So it's a little bit, I think, to some extent, difficult to discern as such. But let's take it from the outside in, and then from the bottom up, and then from the top down if we need to. So the collective mindset model, remember, a model is an attempt by authors and theorists to represent all the concepts that are sometimes running around in between all of our ears and put them in some kind of systematic order for you to understand. Doesn't necessarily mean the model is accurate all the time. It doesn't even necessarily mean that it captures everything. It's meant to give you something to think about. And that's what this is about. Title itself, collective, certainly implies the idea of everyone gathering around and locking in together in order to assure that everyone will be committed to making your school or district, your school building, that much more effective, especially in your cases, so far as the E&L issues are concerned, without a doubt, because that's a change. Even though it's been around, I want to say 20 years, maybe more, it's a change as it continues to evolve and it continues to deepen as issues and challenges that we all need to have a certain amount of muscles to not overcome this as such, but to make right as such. So that collective mindset, that disposition, that set of skills all speaks to that premise. So the model begins on the outside with what we call the two baselines. Well, one baseline would be the word future, that futuring word, which I know I've hit you over the head about several times already. Starting from the bottom and working our way up, what's possible, what's probable, and what's preferable. And the preferable word sounds like the term that most people would really want to drive towards, but not yet, he shouted. Really, what you want to do is work with the possible although it's obviously true that most things are possible, and then walk up to the probable, because the probables are what matters. When I got up this morning, it was raining and it was cloudy, and I said, "Oh no, I thought it was going to be a nice day today." And I had some plans for this afternoon that I thought were going to fall through. And now I'm looking out of the sky, out my window, and it's blue. So the possible future I thought was probable, turned out not to be the one we actually have. And actually, it will meet my preferable future, because I want the weather to make it easy for me to get outside and do some things I need to get done. But think of those three words: it's possible, probable, and preferable. And we have a whole chapter in the book about that. I'm not going to explain it all today, but certainly that's a baseline for collective mindset. Staying on the left side for the moment, we're continuing with the idea of, and think about the collective idea to be welding with this in terms of communicating, and collaboration. I don't use the word cooperation. I use the word collaboration. If you break the word collaboration into its roots, you would see that co means together or with, and labor means work with, heave ho, that kind of thing, rather than work next to somebody and pass them to as in an assembly line. That's not collaboration. That's cooperation. Moving over to the right side of the model, it's how you put it in motion. And that would be, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's about culture. What we do and why we do it, why we don't even know why we're doing what we're doing, because it's so deeply ingrained in what we do or what people have done before you. An analogy I use in a book I'm writing that right now, actually, a new principal, a new chair comes in, new director comes in and takes charge of an E&L program. There's metaphorically, there's a stream running in front of her. Do you want to change the course of the stream, or do you want to jump into the stream and sort of follow the water along? If you're following the water along, you can see the look on my face. It's not something I think that highly of most times. Is okay. Going along to get along is a lot easier than changing the course of the stream. That's why people who often fail at their leadership positions very often fail because they don't understand what that stream is and how they can divert that stream if they need to. And they often also can fail because they can't get folks to understand why they're trying to change the stream. And that's because we've always done it this way. Now you want to do this instead of that. What's that about? So yes, there is that pillar there, PILLAR, of cultural capacity and engagement. And the future words come back in a little bit to some extent by looking at the idea of what we call the myopic mindset, which basically is you're just not paying attention. Everything's fine. Why do I need to change it? Why are you knocking yourself out? Always done it this way. Most of the kids do okay. Some don't. And it's their fault, not our fault. Mindset. To a cohesive mindset, folks begin to recognize that there's different pieces that connect, different pieces that are responsible for other pieces that interact with and sometimes obstructs other pieces. And that's when you try to figure out how to put them into a cohesive, collaborative order as such, which goes back again to the future word, into what we call a futures-based mindset, where everyone's thinking about future. Not just you as the boss. Everyone sees the vocabulary and has internalized, here comes a fancy term, but please pay attention to it. It has internalized a mutual empowerment to create a new future. I like the way I just said that. And off to the right is, again, the idea of capacity and mindset. Now, those are the outside pieces. Now, the inside pieces get a little bit more complicated. I'm starting with from the bottom in the middle of the graphic on page 6 and 1.1 that talks about culture and climate assessment. That's where we are right now. That's why you're doing your artifacts. When you begin to diagnose the team, the group, the stakeholders. Where are they? Why are they where they are? And why don't they know where they are as such? Are people at odds with each other? Are people seeing the same things that need to be seen? Now, in order to get that, in order to be able to put names to these issues that you're going to begin to associate with stakeholder, with culture, you go up to the next place, which would be the focus areas. The focus areas, and there's a separate chapter for each one, speaks to systems thinking. I'm not even going to try to explain that today. It is what it sounds like, but it's more than what you think that it is. Shared vision, mission, and goals. Sometimes people put that in the same box as systems. We don't. We keep it separate. Collaboration, same thing. Sometimes it's locked in under systems and we think it's separate. Design thinking, which is a fancy word for creative thinking. Whole chapter on that. And collegiality, or I call sometimes collaborative leadership. Going back to the premise of one person can't do this. It has to be a matter of mutual empowerment. If you think you're the only one who can make this all go away or promote this, it will topple over and take you and fall down on top of you. Now, once you move through those, once you begin to recognize how these focus areas, these growth zones, I should say, these growth zones interact with each other, because they certainly intersect with each other. Then we look at focus areas, which is how you really go about putting your finger on the pulse of the issues you need to address. And they begin with action and research. And I'll show you how to do that. It's actually going to be part of your action plan, I think. It's going to show you what you do with whatever you came up with in terms of your action and research. And it's also going to give you show you how to come up with what we call a theory of action. Actually, Harvard Leadership School calls it that. I would call it a design plan to find out what you do. I'll give you an example. In a district, we worked with very high absentee rate, and corresponding pretty low, I wouldn't even say very low, graduation rate. And principal, well-meaning person, and his team only wanted to increase the graduation rate by also increasing the attendance rate. That makes sense. What they began to realize, what they found out was why these kids weren't coming into school. Now, one of the reasons was COVID. Hello. But it was much more complex than that. It was economic reasons. And also a major issue that I'm not even sure has yet totally sunk in with the staff is what the teachers were doing was kind of turning kids off. There was just basically, we're not working that hard to help kids get along. And the kids were telling us that when we began to do some of that action and research. So that's how this model works, okay? The model, we can't just work on X and ignore Y or Z. All of these pieces have to be integrated, coordinated, and I don't like this word, implemented in a thoughtful kind of way. So that's what that model is about, right? And so the rest of that chapter goes into what I just said, maybe better than I just did, although I wrote most of this chapter. But in the end, you'll see how all these things weave together. Now, before I move over to chapter 2, I have to tell you, I taught for a long time, and I sit and loved it very much. And I was obsessed with never using the questions at the end of a chapter. To me, it was cheating. The teachers were cheating when they did this. And maybe I was wrong about that, but I still, to this day, don't like to work out of books. And I don't like to work out of with the end of the chapter questions and activities. although once in a while I run into some good ones, and I think this is better than a lot of the ones I'm familiar with. And since I wrote it with two of my buddies, I think we feel pretty confident in that. But I do want to point out page 20 in this chapter, and I'm not going to read all of this to you. I'm going to grab the fifth one down under essential points, not because it's more important than the other ones, but just to highlight the themes that the chapter picks up. Actually, I need to do two. Futuring competencies drive futuring dispositions to meet an organization's deepest purposes. This requires that stakeholders recognize the interrelationship of an organization's subsystems. Tend to forget that a school from a systems point of view is made up of all kinds of subsystems: custodial, clerical, health services, instruction, leadership, finance. They're all subsystems of the whole with a W, and they all answer to the futuring verb. I don't know if you ever thought about it that way, but they all answer to the futuring verb. We also go on to say that there's some themes to consider that speak to some conclusions you can draw. There's only one question I'm going to point out here. You may want to, well, actually, what I'm going to do, let me give you some coming attractions. I'm going to send you, I'm going to post, not today, we're going to post a survey. I'm not sure if that's the right word, an instrument. So I think it's 15 questions. You can do it in maybe 10 minutes, if that. And then you're going to score it yourself. And then you're going to send it back to me. And I'm going to use that to give you a role, ROLE, when we start that simulation. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to put it into place. I'll leave it at that. So it's going to ask you your opinion about the stat and the other thing. Answer it truthfully, and then score it, and then send me the score. Actually, send me all of your scores so I can see that. And what I'm going to do is say, okay, Nicole, there's two Nicoles, I think. So Nicole Dolce, whose name I remember, and the other lady's name was Nicole with an H. I forgot your last name. I'm going to say, okay, Nicole, you are you're a design thinker. I'm not saying you are, Nicole. I'm just making this up. You're a design thinker, and you should become the People Personnel Services Director in the simulation. That's how I'm going to handle it. If we go back down to the last question, right on the very bottom of page 20, it says, does your futures-based leadership profile align with or differ with the collective mindset model? Where does it fit? It's a better way to put it. And I will post a discussion question about that before we get too far into it. All right, done a better job with chapter 1 than I've done today. I did the last time we spoke. Now I just want to do this kind of the same thing I did last week. I'm going to come back to chapter 2 in week 3, but I just want to give you the broader points to consider. Now I'm on page 23, and before anything, you'll notice that the graphic is now at 2.1, and all it does is highlight one of the baselines, the baseline being culture and climate assessment, which is exactly where I have you right now. When you do diagnoses of your team, your stakeholders, and your community. And I'm going to read a quote, and it's not one of my quotes, and it's what I've adhered to for a long time and believed in. Peter Drucker, if you're looking for a person to read about leadership, most of the time not about education, but most of the time he speaks about a business corporation. Not a lot of difference, where he goes on to say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And really, that's what have already begun to tell you. A strategy is something to change the culture, but you can't change a hair on your head. Keep smiling about that one because it's the one I think of right now. You can't change a hair on your head until you recognize what basic beliefs and assumptions are of your organization, of your school. When I get to the content video, maybe today, more likely tomorrow morning, I will talk more about this from a couple of other corners. And I don't like to read to people too often, so I'm not. But you should read a little scenario. It starts on 23 and goes through halfway through page 24. Just a quick example of how culture, people can really defiantly dig in and refuse to budge when it comes to what their culture is about. Sometimes incorrectly, often incorrectly. But in the end, it's a valid dig in until you figure out a way to give them the shovel to dig it out. And so this is a little scenario. It's actually a true scenario. You'll see on page 23 to 24. Then we go to Edgar Schein. I'm going to do more about old Edgar in the second video. In the second video, you'll rather in this section, and I'm sure I've already said to you that Schein is one of my intellectual heroes. Schein again was not an educator. Is not an educator. He is an organizational theorist that is called in all around the world to governments and corporations and charitable groups alike, where he helps them analyze what their cultures are. It might take him upwards of a year to have them do that with him. In our case, we're going to do it in a week, or less than that, actually. But what he essentially says is there's three levels to this, and I may have said this to you last week when we talked about from the top down, there are artifacts. And so whatever you're taking a picture of is an artifact or some kind of concrete physical representation of something that is part of what happens or what you do in your school. Could be a ritual, could be a graduation ceremony, it could be anything, pretty much. I'm not going to argue with what you do, but I do need you to get some sort of picture up for people to have in front of them as soon as possible. The middle piece of the triangle speaks to the values that the artifact may represent or not represent. Sometimes they're very visible, and sometimes they're kind of hard to figure out. Often because people don't know what their values are. Doesn't mean they don't believe in the value, it just means they haven't thought about it enough to know what the value is. Quick example I'll give you as a war story example. When I ran an elementary building quite a few years ago now, we did a lot of action research, and we realized that our reading scores, which were pretty good, but we wanted to improve, was suffering because of the amount of pullouts we were doing. And these pullouts were really interfering with the teacher's ability to have all the children in the class at the same time. So we talked about it for a long time, and we put in an hour and a half block in the morning when nobody could get pulled out. Now, a lot of issues to go with that. It was really a very selfless act on the part of many of our teachers, especially our special area teachers. Everybody went along with it. Then we included a piece of what we call, again, we didn't make this up, it's called DEAR, DEAR, drop everything and read, and we set aside 15 minutes of that hour and a half block where everybody in the whole building, secretaries, custodians, principal, everyone had to read silently for 15 minutes. Not sure the custodians always did, but in the end, everybody was supposed to do that within this block. Just before school began one year, I suddenly get promoted. It's a more complicated sort of story, but I was promoted in the central office, and they brought in a brand new principal, a person whom I knew very well, still know. And I said to him, I'm having a little trouble scheduling this is like 2 or 3 days before school started. I'm having a little trouble scheduling the block schedule. I haven't figured it out yet, but I just want you to know I haven't figured it out yet. She says, oh, I got it. She was very eager, obviously, to take care of it. 2 days later, she called me up. I can't figure it out either. I said, well, you need to figure it out. I would like a day to do that, and I'll help you if we have. No, I got it. I've got it. So I was invited to sit in on the first faculty meeting, which was a mistake in many ways. I'm sitting in the back of the room, pretty emotional about the fact I was leaving the building. And I guess some of the teachers were too. But at any rate, the new principal stands up and says, here's the schedule. And the schedule didn't even get handed out to the teachers in the back of the room before teachers were saying, well, wait a minute, where's the block? And she went, oh, I got rid of that. And I don't, we're not doing it. Well, look about getting off on the wrong foot. Just completely disregarded a value of that building. And it worked. She worked it out. I mean, I'm saying the world stopped when there was a revolution. I mean, it almost was the first day. I'm not laughing at that. I'm just saying that's how upset the teachers became. Because the assumption, this deep assumptions where you really want to get at what makes you a building or department or district as good as it can possibly be is things that have to be brought to the surface. And that's what we're talking about here. The chapter does a decent job on it. It's not perfect. And I want to point out on page 30, we also mentioned a writer, Donald Schoen, who talks about reflection. When you begin to take a look at the artifacts your colleagues are going to share with you, and you begin to reflect, get down a little deeper than how people generally think, because for the most part, we think too fast. I'll talk about that another day. So I will come back to this chapter. Maybe I won't. I will come back to this chapter, as well as post a video that I think Shine does a good job with. I'll read the last bullet to you from Essential Points. These assumptions and beliefs must be identified and parsed, sometimes reevaluated after healthy and deep dialogue. That's the reflective practice piece. To ground to purpose, that is that organization's reason for continuous existence. That's a pretty heady thing there. So work with that. And what does it have to do with the ENL programs? Everything. And as far as themes are concerned, again, I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm just picking the third one out in terms of themes to consider on page 31. To what extent does your organization have the dialogue and exchange skills capacity to articulate what they believe the organization truly represents? So the question is, does the school in which you work, do they have room for reflection, to consider what their culture expects of them, to consider what their future expects of them? What does the future want of them? Do they get time to think like that? Why or why not? How does that benefit you as a leader to try to develop that mindset? Okay, so that takes us up through chapter 2 and into somewhere in the middle of week 3, I suppose. Stay tuned. I don't know if I'll get to it today. I might get to the content video. Not to worry, this one's ending, and this is the one that you have to look at first anyway. So I'm going to stop the recording. Wish you well. Hope you have a great weekend. Looking forward to hearing from you, since I haven't heard a whole heck of a lot from too many of you.